Over the last 3 months, I have developed what you might call an unhealthy obsession with opening lines. I've analysed over 100 opening lines from best-selling novels. Not just any novels, books that readers couldn't put down, books that spawned fandoms, books that people stayed up until 3 a.m. reading. Why on earth did I do this? Well, I wanted to answer one simple question. What makes an opening line so compelling that readers become obsessed? Here's what I discovered. Most writing advice about opening lines is completely wrong. People tell you to start with action or dialogue or a mysterious state, but that's not what the data shows. After analysing 100 bestsellers, I found 4 specific patterns that turn casual browsers into obsessed readers, and none of them are what you'd expect. Let me tell you why I started this experiment. Last year, I was working with a client. Brilliant storyteller, incredible plot, characters to die for. But our opening line was killing her book. Beta readers weren't hooked. Early reviewers were bouncing off in the first paragraph. Even her mother had said she wasn't sure about the beginning. We rewrote it using one of the patterns I'm about to share with you. The result, her book launched to rave reviews, hit bestseller lists within 2 months, all because of one sentence. Same story, same characters, completely different opening line. And that's when I realized opening lines aren't just important, they're everything. Now, before I dive into the patterns, let me be clear about something. I didn't analyze random opening lines. I specifically chose books that created obsession. Books where readers immediately devoured the entire series. Books that launched careers. Books that people still talk about years later. Because there's a difference between a good opening line and obsession creating opening lines. After studying 100 of the best, 4 patterns emerged, and none of them are what the writing guides teach you. Pattern 1 is the emotional contradiction. This is a pattern I've not heard anybody talk about. Most writers think opening lines need to be dramatic or mysterious, but the most obsessive openings create what I call emotional whiplash. They set up one emotional expectation, then immediately subvert it. Here's an example of what I mean. All children, except one, grow up. This is how J.M. Barrie opens Peter Pan with what seems like a comforting universal truth. But that exception, except one, immediately creates unease. It's an emotional contradiction. You have comfort and uncertainty. The pattern works because it creates cognitive tension. Our brains don't like contradictions. We keep reading to resolve the conflict. And so here is how to use it. Start with a statement that seems to point in one emotional direction, then add a detail that pulls it towards the opposite emotion. An example would be, Jess had always been lucky in love until the morning she found her husband's other wedding ring. Starts with happiness, ends with betrayal, instant emotional whiplash, and instant obsession from your readers. The second pattern that emerged was the intimate universal. This one surprised me. The most obsessive opening lines don't start with big dramatic events. They start with small, deeply relatable moments that feel universal. But here's the key. They make the universal feel intimate. Like the author is speaking directly to something you've experienced, but never put into words. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Dickens isn't talking about specific events. He's capturing that feeling that we all have, that life is simultaneously wonderful and terrible. Universal experience made intimate through specific language. And here is another. If you really want to hear about it, the first thing you'll probably want to know is where I was born and what my lousy childhood was like. Salinger opens Catcher in the Rye by acknowledging something universal, our curiosity about other people's origins. But he makes it intimate by having Holden speak directly to us. The pattern works because readers think, this author gets me. And here's how to use it. Find a small, universal human experience. Then present it in a way that feels like a personal confession. Everybody lies about their first heartbreak, but I'll tell you the truth about mine. You can see the universal experience, heartbreak, but it's made intimate by the personal confession. Readers will lean in immediately. The third pattern that emerged was something that I call the temporal disruption. This pattern broke my brain when I discovered it. The most obsessive opening lines mess with time. Not in obvious ways. It was the year 2087 or once upon a time. They create subtle temporal confusion that makes readers feel slightly off balance. Another example would be, last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again. Daphne du Maurier opens Rebecca by placing us in 3 different time periods simultaneously. We have last night, the recent past, the dream, which is timeless, and again, which is the distant past. Our brains have to work to orient ourselves. We keep reading to find stability. And another example, it was a bright cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13. Orwell starts 1984 with a date that feels normal and then adds an impossible detail. This temporal disruption creates unease without readers understanding why. We don't know when we are in the story. And here's how to use it. Play with verb tenses, mix past and present, reference future events in past tense. An example would be, tomorrow I'll wish I hadn't opened that door, but today I can't help myself. This creates temporal vertigo that keeps readers reading. If you want help crafting an opening line that uses these patterns effectively, one that hooks agents and readers from sentence 1, this is exactly something we can help you with in our editorial services, as well as editing your entire book and of course publishing it. There are links in the description below. The 4th pattern that emerged was something called the false certainty. This is probably the most sophisticated pattern, and it's the one that separates good opening lines from legendary ones. The most obsessive openings sound completely certain about something that's actually uncertain. They present information with total confidence, but plant subtle seeds of doubt. Here is an example. It was the day my grandmother exploded. This is how Ian Banks opens The Crow Road, with what sounds like a definitive statement. But as you read, you realize exploded might not mean what you think it means. False certainty creates trust and then immediately undermines it. So here's another example. They say in the moment before you die, your life flashes before your eyes. Sounds like the narrator knows something definitive about death, but the phrase they say immediately introduces doubt. Who are they? How do they know? Can we trust this? And this pattern works because it exploits a cognitive bias. We trust confident statements, but we're also curious about uncertainty. False certainty gives us both simultaneously. Another great example is I am an invisible man. This is how Ralph Ellison opens Invisible Man, with what seems like a clear statement of fact. But what does invisible mean? Does he mean this literally, metaphorically, socially? The certainty is actually complete ambiguity. And here's how to use it in your own writing. Make a definitive statement about something inherently uncertain. Use confident language about ambiguous concepts. So let me give you one I cooked up. The thing about dying is that it's surprisingly inconvenient. This sounds certain, but actually raises more questions than it answers. Perfect false certainty. So why do these patterns work so well? After analyzing 100 opening lines, I realized something important. Obsessive opening lines don't just hook readers, they actually rewire their brains. Each pattern triggers a different neurological response. Emotional contradiction creates cognitive dissonance. We need a resolution. And the intimate universal activates mirror neurons. We feel understood. Temporal disruption engages our spatial reasoning. We need to find that orientation again. And false certainty triggers curiosity. We need clarification. All 4 patterns make reading feel necessary, not optional. You're probably now wondering, does your opening line create obsession? Well, here are 4 questions you can ask. Does it create emotional tension? Is there a contradiction? Does it feel personally relevant? That would be intimate universal. Does it disorient the reader slightly? Temporal disruption. And does it raise questions while seeming definitive? If your answer is no to all 4, well then you need a new opening line. If you answer yes to even 1, well then you're on the right track. If you answer yes to multiple patterns, sounds like you are well on your way to creating an opening line that will spark obsession in your readers. Now, let me show you these patterns in action. Before, Sarah walked into the coffee shop and ordered her usual latte. Boring, no patterns, no obsession. But if we improve this, it would read something like, Sarah ordered her latte for the last time, though she wouldn't realize it until her husband called with the news. This, of course, has an emotional contradiction because you have the usual routine versus life-changing news. You have temporal disruption, present action, future knowledge, past realization, false certainty from last time, but then you have vague news. And so these patterns in one sentence create instant obsession. Ultimately, obsession isn't created by drama, it's created by psychological tension. The best opening lines don't tell us what happens, they rewire how we think about what might happen. They make reading feel urgent, necessary, and inevitable. Your opening line isn't just the first sentence of your book, it's the reason readers become obsessed with your story. And now you know the 4 patterns that make it happen, use them wisely, because your readers are waiting to be obsessed by your writing. And you just have to give them a reason. If you want help crafting an opening line that uses these patterns to hook readers from word 1, check out my editorial services in the description down below. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of these patterns are you going to try first? And even better than that, I'd love it if you put your first lines in the comments down below so that we can work on them together, improve them, and see if we can create some obsessive first lines. YouTube will now be recommending another one of my writing videos to help you write your book. So go ahead and watch that one up next.